Everybody. Welcome to the Red Web. I'm your host, Brad West, and of course, my lovely co-host is Anastasia Anderson and Mr. Greg Burrow, on loan from us from Dragons Are Comedy Fantasy. And we are now going to be talking to you about, this week, we're going to be talking about the ages of comics. And by ages of comics, I'm not talking about the audience, I'm talking about the comic books themselves. Very much like other historical periods where they consider there to have been a golden age or a bronze age, and usually
Jurassic period.
Or these were all exactly. Most of them were, of course, attributed to metals because that's what they figured cave people started using. Or
we already counted, so why not? We already counted our ages that way.
Yeah, so we decided that we were going to do that with comic books. This started a long time ago. Now, one thing we like to pick a little bit on Anna for being so much younger, but when we were growing up, there were only 3 ages of comics: Golden Age, Silver Age, and Modern Age. And of course, Modern Age at the time was whatever we were reading at the time. And Golden Age and Silver Age were pretty clearly demarked and everything. However, several years have gone by since we were kids, and they've expanded it to conclude. Now, some people consider a Bronze Age, and some even manage to break it down into what they call a Tin Age. Well, for our purposes for the show, we're not going to get that varied. We are going to kind of find a middle ground.
Right. There's 4 topics. Deal with it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk first to you about the Golden Age of comic books, from when superheroes first started hitting the page, and other characters and wartime comics, etc., etc. And then we're going to move on to tell you about how comic books started to go away, and then they made a comeback, and we get the Silver Age of comics, which has a majority of the concepts that we enjoy today in superhero media, especially. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to do the Tin/Bronze Age. We're just going to call it Bronze Age. But Greg is going to give you a little of what they considered a subset in there called the Tin Age. And we're going to finish that up with the Modern Age. Now, you would think the Modern Age is a lot more modern than it is, but the Modern Age still goes back 20-some-odd years. So, 1985. So, please enjoy today as we go down the different time periods and the individual comic books and stories and publishing and methods that made those ages unique to themselves.
And there's many reasons why they separated them into different ages.
Yes.
There's one of the things that I think a lot of people attribute them to is the size of the book, the actual size of the book. Mm-hmm. We'll go into more about that when we start talking about the different ages.
That helps with collectors. It helps with placing things historically in time periods and what continuities. Multiverse has a lot to do with it. It is really popular in superhero media right now. A lot of ways that they explain the different periods as having them mean separate universes. And so we'll see how that breaks down story-wise. Narratively, it helps to differentiate the Golden and the Silver Age characters as well.
Right.
And for collectors and selling and such as that. Now, one thing that we do have to warn you about is that there is no really 100% established by any level of the industry, the writers, the creators, the comic book license holders themselves, the scholars, the PhD people, whatever, it actually overlaps. And there's a lot of debate between, you wouldn't think that there's this much scholarly debate, but there's actually a lot of thought that goes into what really defines a specific age. We're going to give you our loose interpretations, what we remember, what we understand of it, but keep in mind that there is some room for interpretation.
Yes.
Right. It's like, and I had to dig this out of them before the beginning of the episode, so there a lot of the distinguishing factors, which, yes, if you're collectors, please take notes. We took a lot of notes for you guys. So he mentioned one, it was dimension size, what was happening during the time period, what kind of stories were distinct of that time period, and also, surprisingly, what the comics were made of. Mm-hmm. That one was cool.
Yeah.
Production and materials had a lot to do with what actually separated some of the different comic book ages.
Right, and then what kind of story styles were popular, whether it was individual issues or strips or things like that.
Well, also, man,
There's
political
so many
ramifications
factors.
of things that happened also really impacted the separation of the ages. Because of course we're going to be talking about the Comic Code Authority a little bit because that had a major deal to do with it. Of course, Seduction of the Innocent, the book, and also of course the McCarthyism trials.
Yeah. Stories.
Lots of stuff.
Right.
So just the stories, political and current events. Are one of the ways that they judge the period. Materials and production methods are another way. Distribution is another thing that really influenced them, as well as the political climate. And I mean, there's just so many factors that go into them. So we're going to try and give you as comprehensive of a review of them as we can.
Right.
All right.
And so, Brad, when was the first time you heard about the different ages, and what did you think about it when you first heard about it?
Okay, so when I was a kid, they did superhero trading cards.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, like, the first time I ever saw anything that said Golden Age on it was a JSA comic book, which confused me. Because I didn't understand that it was a separate universe, the Justice Society and everything. But when they started having the trading cards, the DC Comics trading cards, which I still have the Series 1 DC Comics trading cards, actually had a series within it that had the 3 ages. And so it would come with, like, one card was Golden Age Superman, and it actually told you when his first appearance and what comic book, what the main difference in his characterization was from that time period, etc., etc. Silver Age Superman was a card, and the Modern Age was a card. And so it was really interesting to me, especially characters like there was the Blue Beetle, who was another thing is business acquiring different comic book companies merging also has an effect on what the different ages were. Yep. So Blue Beetle had previously belonged to Carlton Comics and everything, and so they had actually broken down, the 3 different stages of him, and it was interesting, and that was the first time I really understood. Oh, they're talking about publication, but they also refer to it within the continuity of the stories too, to a degree. We'll talk about that when we get to the first Modern Age books, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was what I remember. It was like the Golden Age Batman, with the gun and purple gloves. And then, Silver Age Batman with the blue costume. And the Modern Age Batman, who's, of course, gritty and black. But,
yeah, that's kind of how I figured it out. It's like, I have the fun way and the unfun way, which was, people would come out in certain costumes and they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's the Golden Age costume. And I'm like, what? It's like, I just assumed they were trying to be like, it's vintage. It's like, and then what really exposed me to figuring some of this stuff out is I used to work at Goodwill, and my responsibility was being the appraiser for the auctions. And so someone had to explain to me, like, how to identify certain comic books by their features and characteristics, not necessarily to sell them for high prices, but just to be like, oh, this one's obviously a fake, or this is a reprint because it looks significantly different from what it looked like by then, which changes the cost.
Mm.
It's like, dude, it's like, what was your first time?
It was my first time.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember, because as long as I remember reading comics.
Still living in the Golden Age, right?
Well, I wish. But no, I'm mostly Silver Age. Silver Age was my jam for the most part. Marvel Comics specifically. Spider-Man, I loved Spider-Man like you would not believe. I had the record of Mark of the Man-Wolf. Every Halloween we would listen to that record and read the comic.
Oh,
that's cute.
I believe Spider-Man was my jam.
And I loved, of course, Super Friends, and I loved a lot of the Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, and the 1966 Batman, and so that was kind of more my introduction to the DC heroes, was the live action shows and the cartoons. Right. But my first introduction probably to Spider-Man was probably the Electric Company Super Spidey stories. Which, of course, was Danny Seagren.
And it was still Silver Age.
That was Silver Age as well. Yeah, 1974 was first appearance of Spider-Man live action. Cool. So,
right, we're all learning our ages slowly here.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't think I remember when I found out that there was like a Golden Age and a Silver Age, and because I mean, I know that in in elementary school, they had like a Batman big thick book and a Superman big thick book that had like a whole bunch of the Golden Age stuff, and I just loved checking those out and reading those. So
right,
but I mean, I didn't realize it was Golden Age or Silver Age or anything like that until much later.
I think the only distinct time that it ever popped out that like there were distinctions besides dealing with people who are more versed in it was also whenever they'd have team ups on superhero shows, and they kind of like that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie where they have all of the different types of them, and they would classify them as, oh yeah, this is this age, this is that age, this is this age, and I noticed they did that a lot, and I was like, oh, there's I mean, you figure, like, you think mentally, oh, these are different things from different time periods, but it's not something you go into in depth. Yeah.
So, we'll bring that up here in a minute. We're gonna, when we talk about modern age, I guess, and definitely the Flash of Two Worlds is a milestone.
Well, next episode's gonna be a lot of fun because we're gonna be talking about the Golden Age. Check us out tomorrow for the Golden Age.
Yeah. All right.
See
See y'all later.